ingrained in everyone. You know, this ability, this desire to be affirmed and to have people look at your stuff. And then to get to media literacy is that genuinely people just don't know any better. They see a photo, they don't have the same kind of critical thinking that we do, and then they share it. So this photo, this is a series of photos. There were some tornadoes that occurred in the summer of 2012. Yeah. And so all in southern Indiana and Illinois. And over the course of like 3 months, the same photo gets shared over and over, right? And people don't know, first of all, that's not a tornado, but if any meteorologists in the room, that's not like that kind of formation. It's some sort of other weird thunderstorm. But they don't have any idea, they don't have that sense. It's easy to find this sort of thing, and I'll show you how to use reverse image search. Just raise your hand if you don't know what it is and you haven't used it. Okay, so that's going to be a review for everyone. We can sort of breeze past that part. But we're dealing with a population that doesn't really know. And then on the other hand, you have people, sort of the reason people share things is that it basically supports what they want to believe. And you probably know that this image of Donald Trump, well, the quote supposedly from Donald Trump, is not real. But obviously, in the highly politicized run-up to the election, if you've got a bunch of liberal friends on Facebook, you may have seen this because it says exactly what you're thinking. And another good example of that is that there was, you may remember, in Baltimore, there were a bunch of people who were they wanted to use the incidents of the rioting and the protesting. They wanted to say that it fit into their narrative, and so you had people sharing images. Supposedly this is of people clearing out a KFC. A reverse image search would have told you this is from Lahore, Pakistan. It was sometime before that. But again, people share this because it supports what they want to believe. And there's this really interesting exchange. Someone from Storyful contacted the person who tweeted this, right? And so he said, I'm writing about the spread of fake images. Would you like to talk about that? She says, which one was false? It's not like it could have been portrayed worse than it was, right? So you get this idea that it's not whether the image is true, it's about the overall reality of it. And then she also responds, of all the things that you could write about, that's useless, as if the looting was made up. And so you have this idea that it doesn't matter if the photo is real because we know that people were out there doing this. Like, we're fact-based, but it's important to realize that there are other people, it's hard to say how many people, who think that this is like a legitimate form of discourse. Another example here. Oh, sorry, I gave it away. Do you ever see this photo out? It was supposedly of Darren Wilson, the cop. That people said this is a photo that's supposed to be covered up by the mainstream media, right? That these are his injuries, and it's a motocross rider in 2006. And so this was, again, it was shared widely among people who doubted that that so-called mainstream media was giving them straight information. Then the other thing is not just about supporting your belief, but that people use images to argue things, and that an image it summarizes an argument, better than a lot of people could. And so, as an example here, and this is not out of malevolence all the time, it's just that people, they want to, for instance, in this case, Sandy is approaching the East Coast, and the 1st Army Division East posted this photo and said, this is what the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier looks like right now. So what their statement is, we're standing guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier as this massive storm comes. It was also picked up widely. It wasn't validated, and I think that many news outlets saw that it was posted by a military branch, and they thought that it was legitimate. And it wasn't. It was debunked, and this was an actual photo. Someone, probably a PIO or for the Army had to go out in the rainstorm and take a picture at that time to show people what it looked like. The big difference between these two photos is that one looks amazing and one doesn't, right? So if you're going to make an argument about how they're doing their job and they're out there in all conditions, the one on the left is the one you would use, even though it's not, it didn't represent reality. And then, as you sort of figure out what mistakes were made in this, if you had done a little bit of research at the time, this was posted by the 1st Army Division East. that branch of the military does not, it's not the branch of the military that handles the guarding of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so if you were to, Google what military branch handles that, it's right on the first page of Google, and you can see that wasn't the same one. So what had happened here is that I think it was the wife of the commander of the old guard had taken this photo during a prior rainstorm. Someone saw it. They took off her name. They cropped it in so you couldn't see the watermark that had her copyright, her name on there. So they deliberately changed it so that you couldn't see that, and then they used it on their own. And another thing to note is that this is posted on Facebook with the name, the 1st Army Division East, but is that an official military Facebook page, or is it a family support group of just people who are involved with this organization? And it turned out to be the latter. So, you see how people are using images to try to make their arguments, and we can be sort of misled in the process. You all remember this photo? And what is what's the narrative? What story does this photo tell you?
Kellyanne Conway is being dismissive or disrespectful by sitting on the couch while everyone else is dignified.
Right, and these are the presidents of all the historically black colleges in New York. They're not all of them, but it's like some representative group there, so you can see. But did y'all see this photo?
Yeah.
So this is what happened before, where she's taking the picture, and so it puts the other one in context that she. I don't know what she was doing on her phone at that time, but it is quite possible that she was posting it to Twitter or something. Yeah. And I have some other examples about how sort of the lack of context, is, I'd say, one of the key weaknesses in getting a single image. And then the other thing that's really uncomfortable that we saw in Parkland is that we are part of this ongoing argument between. The country is so polarized that we would like to sort of stand on the side, but we're not. So you all saw this image, right, from Parkland. And then this is Alex Harris, who's a reporter for the Miami Herald, asking basically for some information on this. And you see on the right, I'll help you read some of them. Are you proud that you try to contact kids during a school shooting? Is that what you dreamed of doing? Shame on you. Can we make sure the kids are safe first? Kid's life is at risk and you're trying to get a quick buck off an interview. I'm done. This is despicable. So, she's just and then that's the action. Those are actual responses to her. And then, you probably saw the fake tweets where someone had altered the words that she had said so that supposedly that she was asking if he was white and can she have photos or videos of the dead body, and she was just totally besieged after that. This is, it's becoming, you may have stories yourself of being attacked on Twitter over, your work to try to do this sort of thing, particularly women. The abuse that you can receive is really strong. And so, Alex Harris was not, I don't know what she was doing to validate this, but the first thing she did was to try to contact the person, which is what you should do. But the unfortunate thing is that we're doing all this in public, we're used to do it in private. And it's kind of ugly, right? Calling family members of someone who's been killed is ugly. It's not something anyone wants to do, but it is part of our job. And unfortunately now we're doing it in public. So, it's a disturbing aspect of how we do news now. This is a quote from Claire Wardle at First Draft. They do a lot of work on image verification. She just writes that it builds on the resentment that's been growing about the way journalists operate on stories like this. And there have been, I'd say, easily for the last 5 years, after every, basically you see an eyewitness photo, and then you see journalists who want to get the photo to use it, and then you see all the people who are pissed off at the journalists who are trying to get the photo, and this is a cycle that happens over and over. Okay, so a little depressing, but in terms of it's true that we're all kind of part of the problem. This is an image that Clay Shirky retweeted a tweet from Anonymous. This was during the months of riots in Ferguson, protests in Ferguson. So this was posted in January, I believe, and outside St. Louis. And Stacy Kramer, who looks there, she says that photo. So by the way, Clay Shirky, really smart guy, helps us understand the internet. He's not like a moron when it comes to understanding how images move around online. But so if we're part of the problem, we are also part of the solution because we can all serve to debunk those things that happened in January. And she points out that the cops are wearing short sleeves, but it was 17 degrees out at the time. So you know, there is a process by which we can all debunk these, and we can discuss about the sort of cost benefit of doing public debunking from your official accounts, from your newsroom accounts. But I do think that there are times that you should consider it. This is an example of news outlets, journalists who work for Reuters and for the New York Times. They were asking people to not retweet an image of the East River flooding. This is in Superstorm Sandy. And so this is here to show you that in these breaking news situations, you should consider yourselves partners with your competitors, and that there are times when you might want to work together. Maybe you want to share something back channel that something is false. I mean, in a way, you might feel happy when someone screws something up because you didn't screw it up. But then on the other hand, there's misinformation that's being spread, and I think that it sort of degrades the overall quality of information. So, you know, one option is that you contact some of the breaking news editors at local news outlets and discuss about, like, hey, if you know we see that something's bogus, can we, you know, maybe we should share it with each other and try to help each other out in a situation like that. I know that, you know, in the first half hour or an hour after a breaking news event is like extremely competitive. That's where, like, you know, TV stations especially, I mean, that's where you build your brand, and you sort of make the most, you know, you show your utility the most, but I think that's worth considering. Okay, so it all sort of is building to this idea that you should work with social media skeptically, but that you shouldn't just sort of like, the answer is to not just sort of discard it entirely. This image is of it was one of these weird like Facebook viruses that was going around where you'd click on it and then it would, I don't know, it would send out the post to everyone on your Facebook feed or something. And it said that like a number of people, 16 people confirmed dead in a roller coaster accident, right? And so the Orlando Sentinel, someone from the Orlando Sentinel wrote this. He writes, just trust that if something like this ever happened, you wouldn't have to wait to hear about it from a viral Facebook post. And that was, I think that's the exact opposite of the way things go. I think you probably would hear about it from Facebook. And if you have that mentality that people are just gonna wait around to have you as the official source, you know, let them know what's happening, I think you don't really understand how news happens these days. And the answer is really to try to understand how images go back and forth. I mean, when I was at Poynter, my colleague Kelly McBride talked about how images pass back and forth between the fourth estate, the official media, the fifth estate, this sort of other thing that looks like journalism but isn't exactly, they have different values. There are lots of instances in which an image actually gets the most spread through being picked up by mainstream media. So on the one hand, you have traditional news outlets trying to knock down and discredit people who aren't official journalists, but on the other hand, you have a lot of mainstream media who are really to blame for some of the greatest examples of misinformation. The Old Guard photo, that tornado photo, it's that mainstream media picked that up and publicized it. That guy didn't do it on his own when he posted it to Twitter. It's hard to hold him accountable for the misinformation that spread to, you know, all the people in New York City over that. Do you guys have guidelines at your news outlets about how to handle social media, like to use information off social media? I would think at this point you probably do.
Like here we have if it's not something that they're letting us use, we have to use take a screenshot of all.
Right, we've talked about that.
Stuff.
I mean, the main thing is that I think it's getting better, but it's not like when you put something on Twitter, it doesn't meet it's some other kind of news product that doesn't have to meet your journalistic standards. It still has to meet the same standards. And I think in the early days of social media, there was this idea that it was lesser, in the same way that you might have newspapers who thought that a blog on their website was lesser and that didn't have to meet the same standards of journalism. And NPR and also O&A, you know, they advise that, you know, you're putting your brand, you're putting your even if you don't really want to be, you're affirming that information when you point to it. And so that, you know, the important thing is that if you retweet or pass something along, that you do that and you have the same standards as if you would put it in a typical story. And then the other thing that O&A advises is that not only you try to verify the authenticity and hold them to those standards, but that you seek consent and that you try to not to put people in danger to try to get information, because that it's happened, particularly in like international, like, you know, war zones, for instance, that, you know, you might have someone who, you know, if you have a journalist who wants to get an image, they might put themselves in danger, and so there's an issue of exploiting people, eyewitnesses in that case. So not only are we not paying them, but we could be putting their, you know, they might put themselves in danger to help us out. Okay, so I'm going to move on to just some discovery tools. Do you guys want to talk about the big picture at all, or are you all set?
Quick question. Pointing out fake, to what extent does that re-amplify the fake or debunk the fake?
I've got some stuff at the very end. There is some evidence, so there's research going on about this. There's evidence that official debunking can help and that it will tamp down rumors. And there's also some evidence that the original incorrect information always spreads wider than the corrected information. And the reasons for that could be that they're more controversial, they're more affirming, right? I mean, so for instance, if you are conservative and you are, you know, let's say you are you're reacting to Ferguson, you're opposed to the protests, you feel like the shooting was justified, you're going to share a photo that portrays them poorly, like the Darren Wilson photo, and you're not going to share that other one, because so I mean, there's this whole idea of what are people willing to believe and what do they do with information when it contradicts their beliefs, and there's a lot of research going on about that right now. I think the biggest takeaway that I've heard is that people's minds are changed usually only when someone who's trusted and known to them tells them the correct information, and usually if they don't have that, it's like it just bounces right off them. So. But, you know, there are ways to share information by stamping it in a visually clear way that, you know, so that you're not like helping to inadvertently spread it. And so I do think that's really important. You shouldn't just retweet it and say this is false. All right, so in general, I would say that sort of the mindset shift that you have to engage in is that, you know, on the left you have Twitter, which is most of the time, which is a cocktail party, and then you're just sort of hanging out. Talk about stuff, here's a funny photo, this is really interesting, but the change you should all make mentally, especially if you spend all day on social media, is that you have to sort of treat it like a police scanner, and that the police scanner is a back channel to communication with the cops. There's lots of bad information that goes out on a police scanner. It's not meant to be a broadcast mechanism, even though there are lots of ways to listen to it. It's meant to help them communicate. And so if you just have that mindset that this is a lead generator, this is what we're using to try to find the news, but it is, I mean, I don't know how many of you have done a lot of police reporting, but I mean, it's pretty common that you do not report what you hear on the police scanner, right? It's very unusual that you would do that sort of thing. So that's the mindset change. And the challenge here is that how you get an image like this, this is an amazing photo that was taken, it was like maybe 2014. The guy says, this is posted to an Instagram account, and he says that this is a guy who stabbed people at his college. Everyone ran away. I and another guy got him and we captured this guy, right? And so this is the guy, this is supposedly the guy who stabbed these people. This is at Lone Star College in Texas somewhere. And so this is posted to Instagram, and if you're doing media, if you're a TV station or a news site in this area, I can't remember what town it is in Texas, you want this, right? But you have to get it in a responsible way, and you don't do what BuzzFeed did, which is pretty embarrassing. They write, there's a guy on Instagram bragging that he captured the Lone Star stabber, and then I put this in red. We cannot confirm this is true. He did, however, tag his photos, Lone Star stabbing, fuck this kid, cops are too slow. I have no idea why that's a however. I don't even know what that has to do with it. And we're going to come back to this. If we have time, we can go through a little process on how you would figure that out. But you don't just throw up your hands. This is one from St. Petersburg Times. They just did a poor job on this. So you can see that it has two heads, right? It's an alligator with two heads. Someone emailed them and said that he saw this in the Hillsborough River, and then they published it, and then everyone made fun of them and criticized them. And so this is a column in which they're kind of trying to dial it back in a funny way. I don't think it's funny.
The headline justifies use of it. It's a total crock. That's worth the.
Well, this is actually his follow-up. The first one was, guy says he found the alligator, and now he's saying that it's a croc.
Yeah.
Now, no one wants to be in the position of writing this, right?
I love it.
But I will say that one thing that I think contributed to this is the Tampa Bay Times is a really, really good newspaper. But this was published in what they call the TBT, which is their sort of free tabloid, daily. It's meant to give people who aren't going to be picking up the newspaper, advertising heavy, written with a different tone. And I think that in the newsroom, that this it didn't get published in the newspaper. It got published in TBT and not in the newspaper because they still had this idea that one of them was a lesser product, and they didn't have to really, they didn't really respect it in the same way, and they didn't respect their audience in the same way. So I think that's how they made this mistake. Lots of red flags on this. They had tried to contact the guy. He wouldn't answer. He had I think he had sent another photo at some point or posted to social media of some other thing that looked like it was doctored. I mean, it really didn't take much effort to just walk away from this. So they really should have. So the first thing is that I talked with people who worked for breaking news when it was around, CNN iReport when it was a real active project, BBC, and in every case, they all said that they slow down, and it's hard for you to realize, like when you're in the heat of it, that you think like these 5 minutes are really going to make the story, but just be aware that you might be falling into this trap. Like, this is an amazing picture. This is going to make our month. I've got to have this. And when you do that sort of thing, like that photo of the old guard, right? Like that was a great photo, and you want that, but you're sort of opening yourself up to that kind of problem. So here's a bunch of discovery tools. I'm not going to demo all these, but just a list that advanced Twitter search is back. There was a period of time when it wasn't very effective, and now it is. That second link is a really good story by Dan Victor at the New York Times. He wrote about how he finds people like on social media, and I'll give it away. The column is like the one word that that you should look for when using social media. And the word is me. He was looking for people. The story was about how people on a plane got up because they wouldn't sit next to a woman. Maybe it was I don't remember what religion he was of, and he wouldn't sit next to a woman on a plane, and so it was a big news story. And so people who were tweeting about it said, like, this guy next to me, is telling the flight attendant that he's got to move seats. And he showed about how he uses the word me and my to try to get that personal connection. It makes total sense, but it's not intuitive when you're searching on Google, or on Twitter or whatever. You might think that you're going to search for the name of the flight, or man gives up seat, or man refuses to sit. But that's not how you're going to find it on social media. You're going to find it with words that indicate personal connection. So that was a really good column he wrote. TweetDeck now has a location search, and we were talking about the importance of geolocation. Although most tweets I think still are not geolocated, when you do have that, it can be a really powerful tool. And then YouTube, there's a tutorial on how to use a service on geotagged videos that YouTube doesn't have its own way to search geotag, but then someone created a service that does it for you. And so you can look for videos and with keywords that are geotagged, so that can be really useful. And then of course with Instagram, there are a couple search tools with Instagram. Have you guys used Banjo or EchoSec? If you're part of a big corporation, you probably have a license for it. Yeah, and it's been, I guess they had a free or a almost free version, and I think they've gotten rid of it now. And so what it does is, I can show you an example actually from New Orleans, but it allows you to find social media based on location. And then there's a cool a map of all Facebook Lives that are happening anywhere. So that's kind of a neat service. If you have something that's going on, like breaking news event, that might be another option for you. And then in general, sort of the workflow of how you handle the first 5 minutes, I'd say the most important thing is that, if you're delayed, there's just going to be a lot more garbage out there, right? And so you really just have to start quickly Because if someone who appears to be near the scene early on, even if they don't have a photo or something, you know, if you can identify them as a source, you know, add them to a collection or something on TweetDeck, or you know, then you can start to talk to them later, and maybe later they can help you corroborate something. So time, I'd say, like knowing that someone was close early on is one of the biggest, I think, corroborating or validating factors. Using collections to collect tweets is useful. We've seen this a lot. In fact, a lot of the images, I was actually just checking through to see how many. I wanted to show you some of the live examples. And a lot of the examples that I've pulled over the years, people have deleted, and it's becoming common. So not only people get irritated, right? So we all ask them to use the photo, and some people don't respond. And then the easiest thing to do is just to delete it, delete your account, or to delete the post and then move on. So you know, you should screen capture and also download videos just commonly. If you think it's useful, don't think that it's going to be there in 5 minutes, because you know, people can be really overwhelmed. I mean, we've seen it, you know, national and international media can swarm a person and then just get sick of it. The key here, again, is to go back as far in time as you can, because of all the things we don't know on social media, the time that something was posted is pretty much incontrovertible. Like, that is, we don't know that the photo was taken then, but we do know that it got posted at that time. There's a link to download a video. Okay, so here's an example of how Banjo works. Banjo combines like signals like from the police department if they report a crash, and then also geolocated social media. So do you remember 2 Mardi Gras ago, a drunk driver drove into the crowd at a Mardi Gras parade, and so I asked them, they provided the information on how they got this, and they sent out a Banjo alert. It happened, I think 6:58 is when they sent out an alert at 7:04 p.m. and I believe that the incident happened about maybe less than 10 minutes before that. And these are all the posts that had happened, that occurred through this. And so, you know, just to think a little bit more broadly, even posts that say like, this has been an accident waiting to happen for years is obviously a potential source. So yes, you're looking for eyewitness video. First off, you use this tool and you know like something happened, right? So a lot of this is a way to try to decide whether it's worth sending a reporter out to, and it was. And all these are the different kinds of social media that you could get from that, enough to know that it was legit. And you can see this post was 7:34, so this is posted, you know, 30 minutes. You know, this is enough time to be able to try to reach this person and get them before your evening news. And then this one here, this video, that was a video, you know, a guy just walking through the crowd with all this crazy stuff going on. I use this for the Lone Star College stabbing. I used Geophedia, but it's a similar thing where you could draw a circle around it and it would pull up all the social media posts. And this is an example of what it provided me at the time. These are all the geolocated social media, and you can see the difference between things that don't necessarily mean that you're there, right? That, I don't know if he's there. I don't know if he's there. That, I don't know if that person's there. This person, they're on campus, right? Because they've got the police cars there, so that's someone I would follow. And here's another one. Here's some other images that you got during this time. What's your take on this photo? So let's say, you know, you're following this story, you're wondering if, you know, you're looking for witnesses and things that have happened. What are your thoughts on whether this is someone you'd be interested in or not? Let's just describe what we see. How about, let's start that way.
It's a poor barricade of a door, if that's the intent. But I guess they got it. The doorknob thing is
okay. So that's what it appears to show them barricading a door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Times.
Right. 12:13. What are the other ones here? 12:34. Okay. So it's pretty early.
And it's such a short tweet that it's like you don't have time to describe it. It's gotta, you know.
So if you had to, I mean, you don't want to gamble, but let's just say right now, what do you think? Is this worth looking into or not?
Sure.
Yeah. Any thoughts about the image itself, like compositionally, like aesthetically?
Looks like a stand, well, it isn't necessarily the same proportions as a.
Well, it's not like a good photo.
Right.
Right. That's actually a point in its favor, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you don't get the perfect photo in this kind of situation. This just tells me that someone appears to be in the room or somewhere. And now this is 1213, this is 1237. Same user. What do we see here?
TD.
Alert. Maybe
So-
classroom.
Maybe she's in a classroom.
Yeah.
Right. So if you had followed this person, you know, you could be maybe DMing her and asking her what's going on. She's on lockdown. All right. So we find some people. We got some different sources. Any thoughts about discovery tools? You all set? Good. Okay. So here's a brief history about where we are with validation. I'd say in 2012 it was like chaos. This is when Sandy came along and Alexis Madrigal at the Atlantic. You know, he wrote that essentially to make everyone a publisher, we've destabilized the system we have to surface truth, and it's all information's the same. There are no consequences, and it's impossible to figure out who the original source was. And so he was trying to figure all this out during Sandy, and he was talking about how Facebook had, they've taken us out of the middle of the information chain, and they've made it extremely difficult to do our job. And then last year, obviously partly through the election and misinformation and the Russian meddling, the platform started to take responsibility to promote news literacy. They started working with fact checkers, and there was they gave people the option to flag something. But then just in the last month, or 2 months, it appears that Facebook has taken a major. They're starting to retreat. And this is Frederick Fu, and he writes that bogged down with the insoluble problems of fake news and bad PR, it's clear that Facebook will gradually pull the plug on news. Because Facebook is facing this situation where they've got to hire a bunch of moderators. They're trying to do it algorithmically. It seems impossible. And so with that big announcement about prioritizing friends and family, it sure looks like Facebook is retreating and deciding that, again, their business is just eyeballs on the page. Their business is not news and information. They have said that involves news and information, but it's clear that they're really questioning their role in this. They've been burned badly, and they don't know if they can figure it out, and so they might just walk away from it. So I think that's, we might be back in that situation. We might start to go back to that, where we were in 2012. I mean, I had some hope, I guess, in 2017 that we would have some cooperation with the platforms, but I'm not really sure that we can. Okay, so this is really not for you. This is for your boss. This is for when your boss comes over and says, like, I need to know if that's real because we're going to put it on. Like, this is a big photo. The difference is between the terms verify and validate. Okay? If you verify something, you establish its truth, right? And that's what your boss is asking. You're like, we need to know if this is true. And I think that as much as possible, you should convey to the people higher up who are not doing this work that as best you can do, you can validate it, you can get corroborating information, and you're going to make an editorial judgment, like an informed editorial judgment, but that you're not going to be able to say with 100% certainty that this is true. And I think if your bosses understand that, they'll be more understanding about the mistakes you may make, and they won't hold you to these unrealistic expectations that I think contribute to this knee-jerk reaction, right? If you're getting pressure from your bosses to get something online, you might be willing to gamble with it, and then they're going to come to you and say, how are you wrong? Well, one of the reasons you were wrong is you were put under ridiculous pressure, and you weren't given the time to be able to make an informed editorial decision. So you can print that slide out and stick it under the cube. Okay, so reverse image search or not, only a few people did not know it, right? So if it's going to be a little repetitive, you can go to the, basically what reverse image search does. You want me to demo it or not? Oh, good.
I just want to.
What's that? Yeah. Leave it up? Oh, of course. Seems like everyone, you guys are probably all right on it. It looks at the pixels in the photo and it tells you whether that photo has ever appeared online before. The most useful thing you do is you go and you look at the oldest version of the photo, and then within the, under a minute you can decide whether that photo has ever been used before. So this was circulating on social media in August 2015. If you reverse image search that, you find that I think it was 2012 or something, right? So it was apparently flooding. I lived in Tampa. I know where this is. This is a road. That's a road, and then the bay is on the other side, and the storm had washed the water all the way up. I mean, that's a kind of if you're familiar with the area, not only is it a funny photo, but like that's kind of a crazy photo. It's a common example of the sort of thing you get. I use the RevEye browser extension in Chrome. It allows you to right click on any image, and then it'll let you use all the reverse image search tools and immediately, so you don't have to copy the URL and do it. Right click, go over, and then it immediately pulls it up in TinEye, Google reverse image search, and then there are some others that I don't even use. And then there's an app to try to do this on your phone as well. So that's going to save you from most of the bullshit that you have to deal with. This is a reverse image search would have showed you that this was supposedly after the terrorist attack in Paris in 2015. This is supposedly a photo of Germans marching in solidarity with the French. And you do a reverse image search and you find that it's 11 months old, and it's, I think, after a soccer game or something.
Sure.
And so again, dodged a bullet. This is an example of how reverse image searching is not like the end all and be all. This is a crazy weather system in Texas, and let's just talk about it a little bit. Tell me, what do you think? Weather photos everyone loves weather photos online. What's that?
It's a cool shot.
It's a cool shot. Might be a good one, and
Does reverse image search work if the cropping is different or if the information?
it does,
Okay.
actually. Remember those photos of all the tornadoes, or not the tornado in Indiana? And then someone had made it seem like it was shot through a window or something. It gets it. In fact, this one, it discards, so even though it has text and other things, even if you just have a screenshot and you don't have the exact one, it comes up with its best match.
Okay.
It compares all the pixels in this image with all the pixels of every other image online, and it comes up with the best match. The other thing that's useful is that you can find, it tells you the size of the image, right? So you can see, a lot of times when photos are reshared, they keep getting smaller and the resolution gets worse, right? So you can look for not only the oldest image, but the largest image, which again, you can make photos smaller and not degrade the quality. You can't make photos bigger without degrading the quality. So that's another thing you can do. Reverse image search didn't do anything on this, which is a positive sign. It tells you okay, well maybe this really is of this person. And then when you look at Coach Wig, you learn that he's kind of a weather dork, and he's constantly tweeting photos of weather systems. And then if you were to wait a little bit, so here we have something at 6:55 p.m. and then at 8:40, you have someone who's posted Jay Wig, right? Same guy. He's posted a video of this. So, if you have a photo of something and you wait a little bit, and you come back a little bit later, maybe the same user has been able to post a video, or if you contact him, he'll provide it to you. I was going to do the same thing. See, this is the window part here that someone had added that over to try to, make it look a little different. And the reverse image search still comes up with that.
Mm.
All right, so your workflow here. Part of it is that you're interviewing the image. What does it appear to show? Just like with that chair, this appears to be in a classroom. Looks like they're barricading the door. And just think about what the image is trying to tell you. But the other part of it is to contact the source and learn a little bit about the source. Is it a new account? Do they end up tweeting these sorts of things? Do they post a lot of this stuff to social media? And then obviously you're contacting them, not just to get permission, but to interview that person about the image. You're also seeking outside corroborating information. So if you see that photo of the Endymion the wreck at the Endymion Parade at Mardi Gras, corroborating information could be that the police have reported there was an accident there, or the police are going to the scene of something. It's, the kinds of sources that you're going to be getting are, these, of course, your official sources. I have seen lots of examples in which you see people think, they look at another news story and they take that as corroborating information, but the other news story doesn't have a source in it, and so probably the other reporter may not have had more information, and they basically, you've kind of confirmed your own suspicion. It's not really corroborating information. So you really need to have stories that cite sources. There are apparently primary sources, witnesses, and others. Other ways to, you can get other information from the EXIF data. That's when you click on properties, you see all the data about the photo. It tells you the shutter speed, the ISO. It often will give you the geotag information. Usually when you upload to social media, it strips that out. So what can happen is you can, you see the photo, you want to know if it's real, you ask the person, can you email me that photo from your phone so you can take a look at it. When they email it to you, it should have all that information in there. It'll have the timestamp, and all my photos are geotagged on my iPhone. I think most people tend to use that. And so that's the way that you could try to figure that out. I remember there was one example I was looking at in which someone said that they took a photo from their iPhone. When you looked at the EXIF data, it said it was taken with like a Nikon Coolpix or something. So it's not impossible, but it certainly makes you wonder, how did that get to your phone? It wasn't taken the way you said it was taken. And I have examples of how, you can use with Google Earth Pro, which is free, or Google Street View, you can do a lot of ground truthing, just to see, does the area look like that? I did this we had a hurricane coming in New Orleans, and we also did it for the election last year, where people said there was flooding in a certain area, and I was using Street View to sort of get an understanding of whether that looked like that, so I didn't have to send someone out at the time. Another good tip is that if someone has a crazy photo, ask for images before and after. Rarely will someone only have one picture, and those photos before and after, they serve to put them in the place. They provide additional context. Maybe there's something in another frame that helps explain what you're seeing that you may have been misled by. All right, Storyful, and this is a link to a bunch of tips from Storyful. Okay, and then essentially editorial judgment. Here's what I got going for it. Here's what I have going against it. I want to show you AP's workflow. Essentially, it's on these two processes. They have a sort of a process for the content and a process for the source. So this is a slide from a presentation at O&A, where it's you find the earliest example of the image. You check the source's social history, and then you verify the source first, and then you get permission, and then you check on the image itself. So they start with the source and then go to the image, and that's also important because you're asking them for permission. AP always asks for permission. I mean, obviously they have huge reach, they have big liability, so they're not going to be using something if someone doesn't give them permission. So this is called News Check. This is a cool tool. First Draft is they are interested in all kinds of information, disinformation. This is a browser plugin. If you click that link, it'll take you to the story about it, and it's in the right corner, of your browser window, and you click on it, and it leads you through this checklist of all the different things that that are sort of the questions that you can ask. Like, are you looking at the original version of the story? And it gives you a few scenarios, like which one is closest, right? A red, if you see the identical photos online right before, that's red. That's probably not real. And then there are yellow or green that tell you that whether this is looking good. So you can actually go through it as a little flow chart, and it'll help you keep all the questions in your mind. It's a browser plugin. It's really cool. It's a good service.
Are you making this available?
Yeah, the link is bit.ly, or I'll give it to you afterwards. Okay. But everything here it's all available, and all these are linked. Okay, so let's just we got a little bit of time. We'll just do some scenarios and you can try some stuff out. This is an example of how I used Google Street View. So during the, are you familiar with what election land was? If you were, didn't NBC participate in election land? No? Election land was ProPublica's project to try to look for polling problems and other people being denied the access to vote, or other kinds of issues with voting. And it was actually one of the ways that ProPublica was able to say definitively there wasn't widespread voter fraud, because they literally were looking all around the country for it. And so we participated at the Lens, and so we had some reports of a long line. So someone tweeted this photo and said there are a lot of people waiting here. And so I went and I looked at the address that was for the polling place, and it was of this planetarium, which wasn't very helpful to me because I couldn't really see the relationship between these two things. But what I did is on a little street view, I just drove around, I walked around every alley, and I could see eventually that that this is like the back side of the building, and this is the side of that building. And so I knew enough, not that it was true. I didn't know whether people were walking away, and I didn't know if this was an unusually bad line. But I did know that this is a line of people waiting to vote. That's basically what I've got. And so when I sent someone out there, or I had someone call a person and to talk to them, I at least knew that there was enough that we should be able to go on and to talk about it. This is an image of of me looking down the alley. So you can see that this is the alley coming from the other direction. That's that house, that's the building, but just from the other side. Oh, this is good. All right. So, all right, what does this photo tell us?
Stop taking pictures.
Yeah.
This is taken during this is WTO protests in Chicago, and this is a Chicago Tribune photographer. What does it seem to show?
Some guy being
It looks like the officer is about to punch the photographer.
Yeah, it sure looks like it, right?
oh, I see
The fist right here?
yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a crazy photo.
It looks like an iPhone photo because somebody's finger in what is
Right,
that?
something's in the way. Yeah, right. So they posted this. He posted this photo, but then he ended up doing, because of all the questions about it. Yeah, I think I can do it. They wanted to sort of provide some additional context of what happened. So, because for people who are against, sort of upset with the cops and think that they're being violent, this is certainly a bad image for the cops. A little hard to see here. Am I on the big one? Am I on the maximize button?
Next one.
There, no.
Okay. So this is a series of all the photos that he took, and this is I just think this is the best. It's really a great example of how context matters. Okay, this is early on the photo. So we see this cop in the middle without his helmet on. See this guy right here? See his helmet to the right? So you got these sticks out here, and he's narrated each one, but I'm gonna help you out. The cop got his helmet knocked off, okay? Oh, sorry, there's like a delay on this. Okay, now you see the cop, he's grabbing this, whatever, it looks like a table leg that maybe he was hit with, okay? All right, you see the cop coming forward?
Yeah.
Now the other cop has a table.
Right back here?
Looks like the other one has the table, like,
Yeah, he's grabbed it too. I mean, this is full on, this is a melee, clearly.
Sometimes in these scrums, and I've been in them, there are more photographers, journalists than there are actual protesters.
Right.
So you have to worry about, are you part of the problem?
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy situation.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the cop coming forward. See how he's taking that woman and pushing her aside? So it's, I don't know what's going on, but he's headed straight to the photographer, it looks like. Oh, okay, so now we see this. You got a guy, it looks like someone's like hitting the cop with a stick on the head. And now you see here, see how the stick is actually broken as he broke it over his head? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I haven't seen that other cop yet. Okay, so he kind of falls back. Oh, and you see the guy coming in from the right? The white cop?
Yeah.
And so then he's coming to take out the guy. It looks like the guy with the stick was like right in front of him. So the image, the story that's told from that first image is very different from the story that's told from the other one. Because the first one looks like police brutality. I mean, the cop is gearing up to clock someone, and it's very hard to like, how could this be okay? And then you see the other images, and you see how there's more to the story. Am I on the right tab? Cool. Uh-oh. Do y'all remember this photo?
Sure.
Justin Trudeau, did you see the video beforehand?
Is this the long handshake or?
So the photo, the moment of him looking down, you know, is caught in time, and it makes it seem like I'm not shaking your hand, buddy. And then I mean, you can see how that was not at all what was really going on. I feel like that photo was, I don't know, I think that photo, I mean, it was very popular, but it probably wouldn't have been the one that I would have sent out as a representation of the event. I mean, I don't know, maybe they sent out 50 photos from that event, but that one doesn't seem like it was one that I would have chosen.
It's a narrative and my perspective is right.
Yeah. What did I do? All right.
Are you trying to get it to?
It was like a weird delay. Let's go forward on this. Do you remember after the Boston Marathon bombing, there was like this whole effort online on Reddit to try to find the bombers and like who they were. And so there was the cops put out this photo, FBI put out this photo that they believe it was one of the bombers, right? And what they have is this guy running away, and there was this huge debate about everyone was playing detective. And so one of the things that people were discussing was whether it had been a doctored photo. So this is an image that was tweeted by a guy who worked in the New York Times, who's not a journalist, but he, still works for the New York Times, and I think he carried a lot of credibility for that reason. And he writes that this is why I think that the photo was photoshopped. And he's pointing to these blurry areas and areas that he thinks are suspicious shadows, okay? Later, as it turns out, that was the bomber. But not only that, this is a photo that was posted to Facebook by one of the runners. Later, he just posted it to his friends. Again, it's just this random photo. But if you look here, you see that practically the exact same photo was taken, right? And so, what that tells me, not only was the guy that, he was the bomber as it turns out, but early in the process, you could see that this corroborated that other image. So it's a long way of saying that I would urge you to not engage in this sort of, get on layers and looking at curves on Photoshop, because it's really easy to sort of see things that aren't really there. JPEGs are compression, they compress images, and there are lots of distortions and anomalies in images, and so there are lots of tools that you can use, and I would say this is just something you shouldn't even fool with. You could, if you have photographers in the newsroom who are really good at Photoshop, I would recommend that if you think something's been Photoshopped, you send it to them and you ask them. But even in that case, maybe they don't know. They know how to work images, but maybe they don't have a lot of experience in falsifying or manipulating them. So I just think you can spend a lot of time on it, and it's probably not a good use of your time. All right, here's an image. This is after a thunderstorm in New Orleans, outside of New Orleans, and this was tweeted by a parish president, Jefferson Parish president, and it appears to show a train car that had fallen off a train track. So I just want to talk through about, what's your decision-making process on it?
The train, the company, whoever operates the track or the train can say whether that's their.
Yeah, it seems like they would know. Well, I don't know. Maybe. I guess it depends on how. Certainly, I would contact the CSX or whoever it was, whoever operates the rail line. Yeah. Does it seem believable? Just the nature of it. I don't know.
But we're talking, the train tracks were elevated. Is that what that is?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So here, this is a photo of what it looks like on a normal day.
Oh my goodness.
It's a really high. This goes over the Mississippi River. It's at the Huey P. Long Bridge, and it's because the bridge has to be so high, and the train it goes for a mile in this really gradual increase, and it towers over the road. So to your question, yeah, apparently it's a really big bridge.
So how could that be? How could the water be that high?
What's that?
How could the water be that high?
Oh, so you're questioning about this? Well, this is supposedly the train was blown off the tracks in a windstorm. That's what he's claiming.
The street would have to be flooded. But it seems like it's on the wrong side.
So you're doubtful. This goes
This is personal.
Huh?
This is personal Twitter account.
He posted it to his own Facebook page, which is, by the way, a good example, good to think about because, he's an elected official, but does he know? Did he take the photo, and does he know media literacy? Or, I don't know. Just because you're elected to the Jefferson Parish president, council doesn't mean that you understand this stuff. As it turns out, this is a great. If you will tolerate, you just let me know. If you want to tolerate me, the mouse, I can show you a video of the train falling. You want to see it?
Sure.
Yeah.
They've got an ad, so I'll explain what's happening when the ad is playing. This goes to the lesson of there's never only one photo, right? So you should just wait. This is a photographer for the TV station was covering the storm. They're gonna make us watch an ad. Oh no, they're not. Good. All right. So here he is. He pulls into this fast food place, and he actually ran inside because it was so bad. He got out of his car. I can't believe that the wind could be so strong as to knock those trains right off the track. So, I mean, what a stroke of luck. He happened to pull into a Raising Cane's. He runs inside. He left his camera on the dash running, and he didn't realize until he got back to the office later when he had captured. So, good for him.
You're lucky than good.
That's right. Yeah, pretty amazing. If I could just
Click out of the tab, can you click the tab?
All right. This is from Sandy, and it was, and this is from Super, you know, I guess it was Hurricane Sandy, right? Superstorm Sandy. So what does this tell us? You may not be familiar with New York City. It's from the Dumbo area in Brooklyn. So let's just talk about your process. What are you thinking?
Lights are on.
Uh-huh.
Didn't it cause outages all over the place?
So your question is how the lights are on?
Yeah.
If it's flooded? Okay, I think that's a really good question. What else? What's that?
I'm just saying, as far as the power being out, depends on at what point the power went out.
Then it may not have gone out immediately.
And
right? That's a
where are
good
you
point.
shooting from? What is the vantage point?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a really good question, because how is it that, I mean, there are lots of tall buildings, so it's conceivable, but yes, I mean, what is, you know, you get on Google Earth or something and try to figure out, like, are there buildings that would have had that vantage point, for instance? That would be a good thing to investigate. Obviously, you want to contact this person.
Is there a building under, what is this? Right there.
That thing that's all lit up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the people who know the area, it's a carousel. I mean, you can't tell from the image, but I do know that it's a carousel. It's, I don't know, you know, there's some sort of amusement park there or whatever. So when this happened, their real-time debunking team, they basically just decided they thought it was very questionable, and they decided to wait because they couldn't tell. And they tried to reach the person. One of the things they were trying to find out is, like, how were you there? So then later we see this image. And what do we learn from this one? It's lit up, it's powered, right? Particularly, this is the most important part of the photo, in my opinion.
The water.
In this photo, you can't tell how deep the water is, right? It looks like there could be water everywhere. In this photo, to your question and your question, right, about how the power's on, it appears that the water is just lapping up right to the edge. And I don't know if you've been in a lot of flooding situations, but you can't, water could be just like a half an inch below something and everything's fine. So that kind of answered their key question, and they did decide that this was real. This was taken by another person, so they corroborated it through another person, and then they interviewed the first person in the intervening time, learned that person had evacuated, and got some more information about that. So they were able to say with confidence, like, yeah, they felt like this was a real photo.
Is that trolley?
This is a subway station in Brooklyn, and they wanted to know how this. Actually, it appeared to be a subway subway station in Manhattan, and so the 86th Street station, and so they thought that it was a fake. And one of the reasons they thought it was a fake is that it was so high above sea level there. It was like 100 feet above sea level at that part. So they didn't understand how the subway station would have been flooded. But they kind of turned this over for the entire evening. But then they had other photos that were posted later of this same subway line down farther in Brooklyn that was flooded. And so they decided in the end that they never actually fully, they didn't get confirmation on the first photo, but what they did find out is that the subway line is flooded in other places. And then they also realized that there's a subway station in Brooklyn that was also the 86, and so they realized that we had assumed the first time it was a rabbit hole on the Manhattan line. It wasn't even the right station at all. So it's a good sort of reminder of how one piece of information can tip you off. Anyone familiar with DC? Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
These are photos that show apparently that the metro is flooded. You see them walk, rainwater rushing down. What are your thoughts on this? Because we're local familiarity, it certainly would help.
I can't believe there's that much water coming down.
That one girl's in short sleeves, maybe going back to the other.
Right?
Well, it could be a summer storm.
Could be. Right? I don't remember what time. This is, it's taken in June.
No one really looks scared.
No one looks scared?
And the girl up there in the black shorts is just standing there, kind of not running.
Right. Right. So if you go to Google Maps and you look, obviously DC is very hilly. As it turns out, this subway station is at the bottom of the hill, and it is known to flood. And all these are, and by the way, all the things you're saying about you're skeptical, I think that's the right approach. Essentially, is to wait. And if you contacted the DC Metro, they ended up having video, and they had official photos that they took that would have corroborated that.
Wow.
So it's an amazing photo, but it's real. And apparently, it has happened at different times.
Jeez.
That's the official. This is their official surveillance video that shows the water, flowing down into the subway station.
And I'm just thinking it's not even necessarily weather related. It could have been like a waterman break or something like we had here in San Diego one time that could have caused that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't, the location wouldn't matter. The fact that the waterman break happened on that street.
That's definitely a possibility. Yeah. Right.
It looks like he's on his phone while the water.
In the right hand.
Well, yeah.
Nonchalant, yeah. Just
Well,
noted.
so that nonchalance tells you, it could tell you that people who use this thing all their life are used to it, right? Or who knows, maybe nothing is surprising anymore. This is an example of how you can report something out. Again, how things are politicized. A video. This is from the Election Land Project, in which someone took a video from a parish north of New Orleans that he thought was, in which someone said that the vote. He overheard polling place workers saying it already has votes on it. And he took this to mean that it had votes for Hillary Clinton on it. And he, how many thousand? It had 525,000 views on Facebook. And it was picked up on, Breitbart wrote about it, said that this was an example of voter fraud. So we were looking into this. This was one of the things we found through the Election Land Project, and we were doing this while the polls were open. And, it's hard to read here, but what we learned is that there was a good explanation for it, and that the explanation was that apparently the way that you set the machine that says like it's ready to go when the machine is off, that same button actually is the button you use to tell the machine when someone has walked into the booth and walked out without voting, so that you have to count the number of people. And so the poll worker was hitting the button trying to print it, but because the machine was on, it was registering voters, not votes, but voters. And we talked to the Secretary of State. They gave us a clear explanation of how it made sense. And then you listen to the video and it starts to make sense. So again, if you're actually reporting this out, it makes sense. And by the way, I don't know how many thousand. Maybe we had 5,000 people read our story, and they had 525,000 people read his Facebook post. So, that's kind of depressing. But I don't know. There's Breitbart. Their headline was Louisiana voting machine logged votes before poll opened. It's just indefensible. And by the way, then they later corrected the story, but they never corrected the headline. It's just, but what can you do? And this is an example of how, so we're at 11:30. How much energy do you guys have to do more? Not 15 minutes, or are you ready to go? You gotta go? I can go.
I can.
15 minutes?
You're here.
Okay. So this is a fighter jet crashed in Virginia Beach, And so this purported to be the fighter jet that had crashed. So what are your thoughts if you see this on social media? What do you see in the picture?
It's a cone that indicates it's been there for a while. Somebody's responded.
Okay.
Smoke in the background.
Nothing in the forefront is really damaged.
Could come in from the other end.
Nothing here, like the building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up there. But
And you all see this, right? You know what that is? Tail section of,
Yeah.
looks like the tail section of a jet. So it's hard to reconcile that with this, right? That's kind of my biggest issue with this. It's posted at 1:06 p.m. At 1:40 p.m. we see this picture. It's from a different user.
that doesn't make sense. By then, if a cone had been out at 106, they would have. And if it was a serious threat, no, police and fire would have said, "Stay away, stay away."
Mm-hmm. How about anyone else?
Why is it still on fire 34 minutes later?
Well,
I guess fuel.
But that's a good question. But the thing that we should remember is that this is the time that it was posted.
It is.
Oh.
We don't know when. We don't know when it was taken.
Oh,
So let's consider that.
yeah.
Is it possible that this photo was taken first and posted later?
Yeah.
So this was an example that Breaking News had, and he showed this to me when I was talking to him at the time, Corey Bergman, and he said, I passed on this image because it just seemed too risky. It was a great image. He said for Breaking News, for what they do, it was a really great image, and he really wanted it. But it seemed too risky, and so he waited, and then he had this other image. What he said is that he didn't regret waiting. He said he was completely comfortable with that decision because, my gut, not my gut, but all the questions I had about that image, which are the questions about the building and how did this thing land there without destroying everything around it? They were all good questions, and he couldn't answer them. And so later, when that other image comes out, he thought, okay, well now I feel like that is real. But he didn't second guess himself later. I think that's important. If you wait and find out that it was real, the answer shouldn't be like, okay, maybe next time I won't wait.
So it is definitely real.
That was a real photo. Do you want to figure out the Lone Star stabbing horn? It's a little arcane, but there are a couple clues here. Essentially, if you see this photo on James K's Instagram, how would you report it out? And there are definitely some leads in the picture that you can go on, or in the image itself.
A filter was used because you don't have a border on it normally.
What are you talking about? The border?
There's a black border on the image.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
No, I mean the actual.
Oh, this thing. Okay.
This.
Yeah.
black border.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, it does look like it was filtered
Yeah, like
or something or board. Yeah, right.
why take the time to do that? I mean,
The other thing that's weird though is this border.
oh.
And what you have observed is that sometimes people take a screenshot of something and then they share it, and that appears to be what it has been done here. What are the ways? I mean, you can certainly background this guy, right? It's a great name, by the way. Cheesin365. If you go to his page, I went to it. Every picture is about him drinking beer, him with girls, or him at the gym. That's everything.
It's his life.
That's his life. But you know what? You put that together with the idea that some guy tackled him, like, okay, well, I mean, maybe. What other things? How about the user, James K?
Wait, we saw her before. She was the one in the classroom.
That's right. Yeah. So now that's a pretty big piece of information. So we know we feel like she was in the classroom, and now she somehow has led us to this picture of this guy. We think that she's on campus. She might know him. Seems like we should contact her. And that is what the CNN producer did. This is how he found the picture. He found it through James K. And he interviewed the guy, and he talked to him, and he had enough information. I think later the guy tweeted, "Oh, I don't have the picture." Cheesin tweeted a picture of him in the back of a cop car. Must have been held for questioning or something. So they interviewed him, got a bunch of information, asked what happened, and so all these different pieces together, they interviewed him, he was in the back of the cop car, they felt like they had enough, and they put that on the air at the time. But that connection between her and Cheesin is like, that's the key, that's really important to make, to help make that decision. Okay, talk about some issues on publishing. The importance of attributing things socially. I would say that we sometimes are led to not, we find something on social media and we don't want to tell people how we got it, and so we just say it's from Twitter or something. I would encourage you to not do that, because in the event that you're wrong or you're being misled, by taking that information off, you're really making it harder for everyone else to do their job. So I would just encourage you to be upfront and sort of create that, what I call chain of custody for the information in a breaking news situation. And then the other idea is that, I think it's become more common that you watermark images with actually potentially the source itself, so that someone can't change that. And it's also a way that you can watermark images. I'll show you that later about how you can watermark images, with a stamp that says something's fake or not. And that's what we go into here. So we talked about whether you should debunk images. This is actually great. This is from a storm in Fort Worth. It was in 2015, and the amusement park sends out this picture. This is not Six Flags in Texas. This is not our coaster. Well, obviously, if they sent it to everyone, right? I'm pretty sure all those other news outlets had already tweeted this out. That's a really clever font, of course, the meme font. It's a very clever way to make sure that people see that it's fake. But there are other ways. You see, this is an example from France where they put that label over the front, over it, so that it's immediately evident to people that it's fake. And then here's an example from the Atlantic. Again, stamping it with the green seal of approval. I think red and green are your options on this, but you can do a variety of different ways. In terms of getting permission to publish, obviously the biggest thing is that you don't just have the right to take anyone's picture online. I think that we're probably moving towards that point where people already know that. And so you obviously have to ask them for permission, but let's say you can't reach them, or maybe they don't give you permission. You could try to embed it according to the terms of service on that platform. Who asked me to look into the case, the New York case? Yeah, Tom. There was a case that it was litigated. It was a copyright case in which someone had taken a photo of Tom Brady, and then other users took that photo and posted it to Twitter, and then news outlets embedded the tweet, right, using terms of service. They felt like they were protected because they didn't actually they didn't hold the picture. It was the defense. It's on someone else's server.
It was a link to the.
Right, we're linking to it. We're not displaying it. They compared it to a link. And the judge ruled against it was Breitbart and someone else on this, saying that they had violated copyright. I think one of the important lessons here is that, first of all, that's like kind of a legal gray area right now. But one reason that they didn't sort of have a good defense is that it wasn't the original user who posted it to social media. So when you ask people, can I use that picture? The first question is, did you take that picture, right? Do you actually have the permission, the ability to share permission to use that? Because in this case, other users put it on Twitter and they embedded those other users' tweets. This person had never given his consent. I think that's really important to realize. We can talk about fair use, but essentially it's a legal defense. If you actually get into the position where you're having to argue fair use, it means someone has a problem with what you did. Usually, you take it down. But I just think it's worth remembering that that by the time you actually have to argue fair use, you've probably got someone contacting you and telling you that they don't want you to use their image. And then you mentioned, right, using the image in a screenshot. you know, essentially, we did this a pointer where we would, if we wanted to display a photo or something, we didn't have permission to use it, we would to show the entire front page to show how it was presented in context. And that is one option. But given that case, with the, you know, the issue about someone not granting permission, I'm not sure that that would really protect them. So, I mean, it's kind of a gray area. Storyful also licenses images from eyewitnesses. I mean, that's kind of their business model. And I think we could probably slip through this. Oh, correcting on all your platforms to try, you know, now to sort of try to chase down information and be upfront about what happened. I think it's pretty common. I don't think that there's anything wrong with apologizing to people for misleading them. And then another option is if if it got retweeted widely, is that you would actually, you know, spend 20 minutes to try to find people who are influential, whatever your level, 10,000 followers or whatever, contact them and tell them that, you know, that was incorrect. Can you please pass on the corrected information to the followers? I mean, it's hard, but you know, it's worth doing. These are some slides that describe sort of the overall nature of the situation we're in. This is a story from Minnesota. It pops up in someone's Facebook feed saying, like, do you remember this from like a year ago? And he posted something saying, like, I'm not ready. And apparently it gets shared on Facebook. People thought this storm was coming. It was from a year ago. They even added this line to it, right? And it still continued to get shared. It was like the biggest story on their website, and it's like they can't get it through to people that this is not a current story. It's extremely frustrating. We already talked about this, whether official accounts can debunk. All right. Here's a journalist with that fake shark photo, and you have a user. This is just some random person. It's like, please don't tell me you believe this. It's been around forever. So that's kind of inspiring to know that our users actually know this stuff. All right, there's another example. I think we're pretty much done. Thank you to our sponsors, Knight and the Online News Association. And I would really appreciate it if you go to this link, fill out this form, tell me what we can do better, change it at all. Okay? That would be wonderful. Happy to answer any questions.
What's the link to the?
Oh, the link?
Again,
So very
overall. I got the bit.ly, I didn't get to this.
bit.ly ONA local, the ONAL are capitalized, social image. And everything's linked. All right, we made it through the rainstorm.